When people think of Sweden, they often imagine an almost perfect country. Blonde girls walking the streets of Stockholm, snow-covered forests, crystal-clear lakes, and one of the wealthiest, most civilized, and happiest societies in the world. But that's only the surface. Behind that peaceful beauty lies a Sweden full of paradoxes, a place where newborns nap outdoors in the middle of winter, where people have almost stopped using cash, and where many must wait decades just to rent an apartment. Here, privacy is respected to such an extent that it sometimes turns into distance. People can live in comfort and safety, yet still quietly face darkness, cold, and loneliness. So, just how beautiful is life in Sweden really? And what do its people have to give up to live in a society considered one of the most enviable on the planet? Let's step through that white snow to discover a Sweden completely different from anything you've ever imagined. Part 1. A vast yet quiet country. Sweden is larger than many people imagine, with an area of around 450,000 square kilometers, but a population of just over 10 million. Most of the country remains covered by forests, lakes, and stretches of land that have barely felt a human footprint. Even Stockholm rarely feels crowded or suffocating. The streets are clean, traffic is orderly, and people always keep just the right amount of distance from one another. Here, silence doesn't mean coldness. It's simply how Swedes respect each other's space. In the 2005 World Happiness Report, Sweden ranked 4th. But happiness here doesn't come from displays of wealth. It's built on stable income, a clean environment, a solid welfare system, and a remarkably high level of trust between people. From reliable public transportation and roads that stay maintained through the depths of winter, to subsidized healthcare and supported childcare services, everything points toward a single goal: keeping life running smoothly. But that stability doesn't come for free. High taxes, and expensive cost of living, and a host of social norms are the price people accept in exchange for a sense of security. Sweden doesn't offer a cheap life. It offers a predictable one. And to understand why this society runs with such order, we have to start with a trait that leaves many visitors puzzled. Swedes can stand very close to you, yet still keep an invisible distance. Part 2. The invisible distance between people. In Sweden, even a crowded bus stop can feel strangely quiet. If there are still empty seats available, people usually won't sit right next to you. In elevators on trains or out on the street, conversations with strangers rarely start on their own. At first glance, this can easily make visitors think Swedes are cold. But in reality, they simply place a high value on personal space. They don't ask deeply about income, family, or private matters. They rarely interrupt, seldom show big emotions in public, and typically don't show up at someone's home without arranging it beforehand. An invitation for coffee sometimes has to be planned days in advance. But once you're let into someone's inner circle, you'll realize that silence doesn't mean indifference. Friendships here may form slowly, but they tend to be lasting and genuine. Swedes don't try to impress you the moment you meet. They let time prove everything. And perhaps it's this reserved way of living that creates a paradox. People are free to live exactly as they wish, yet sometimes they still face a feeling that's hard to name: loneliness within a society that is in every other way complete and civilized. Part 3. Nordic. Beauty isn't just about looks. When people think of Swedish women, they often picture a distinctly Nordic beauty: tall, fair-skinned with blonde or light brown hair and striking blue-gray or green eyes. But what truly makes them stand out isn't just their appearance. Swedish women typically grow up in a society that values independence and equality. They're encouraged to decide their own path in education, career, and lifestyle without needing to shrink themselves to fit others' expectations. On the streets of Stockholm, that beauty feels natural too. Clothing tends to be simple and refined, understated, yet full of personality. Their confidence doesn't come from trying to draw every eye in the room, but from feeling comfortable simply being themselves. Equality also shows up in everyday life. Here, fathers pushing strollers and taking parental leave, mothers continuing to pursue their careers and family responsibilities shared more evenly between partners. Sweden isn't a perfect society, but here a woman's beauty isn't found only in her face. It's found in her right to choose the life she wants. And the way Swedish children are raised to become independent sometimes starts with a sight that leaves visitors stunned babies napping outdoors in the middle of winter. Part 4. Babies who nap through winter. In the middle of a Swedish winter, you might come across strollers parked out on porches with babies sleeping soundly in the cold air. For many visitors, the sight is almost hard to believe. But in the Nordic region, parents believe that fresh air helps babies sleep more deeply and comfortably. Of course, the children aren't left exposed to the cold. They're dressed in multiple layers and tucked into insulated sleeping bags. Parents keep a close eye on the weather and only do this when conditions are safe. What's remarkable isn't the cold itself, but how early children here become familiar with nature. They play outside as snow falls, explore on their own, and learn to pick themselves back up after every stumble. Swedes don't try to shield their children from every difficulty. They prepare them to be strong enough to face it. But a childhood this protected and well-supported doesn't come cheap. Behind this enviable welfare system lies a tax burden that can leave many foreigners stunned. Part 5. High taxes but not paid for nothing. In Sweden, workers can see a significant chunk of their income vanish to taxes every month. For most people, local income tax rates range from around 29–35% depending on where they live. On paper, that's a number that stuns many people. But taxes here don't just disappear onto a form. They come back in classrooms, hospitals, daycare centers, public transportation, and the months of leave that let parents stay home with their children. Swedes don't love paying taxes. They accept it because they believe that when life takes an unexpected turn, illness, unemployment, or old age, they won't have to face it alone. It's a quiet agreement you give up part of your income in exchange for a sense of security for society as a whole. But even with a stable income and solid welfare benefits, there's one thing money doesn't necessarily get you quickly in Sweden: an apartment in the middle of the city. Part 6. Money doesn't always buy you a home. In Stockholm, finding a long-term rental can sometimes feel like joining a line with no visible end. Rental housing is price-controlled, but supply is scarce. Many people spend years in a queue, sometimes even longer, just for the chance to sign an official contract. While they wait, they sublet at higher prices, move frequently, or live far from the city center, and lose hours commuting each day. This is Sweden's paradox, a wealthy country with strong welfare where finding a stable place to live can still become a quiet, ongoing struggle. And once that apartment door finally opens, you'll step into a world that's almost gone silent on coins, because Sweden is edging very close to becoming a cashless society. Part 7. A country that barely needs cash. In Sweden, a wallet full of cash won't necessarily make your life easier. From cafes and shops to public transportation, most transactions are made by card or phone. Only about 1 in 10 purchases still involve cash. With the Swish app, people can transfer money in just seconds, whether splitting a dinner bill or buying a small item at the market. Fast, simple, and convenient. But when every payment depends on a phone electricity and a network connection, that convenience becomes a vulnerability too. Older adults risk being left behind. A single technical glitch is enough to bring the whole system to a halt. That's why Sweden is still working out how to protect the role of cash for emergency situations. Because sometimes the more modern a society becomes, the more it needs to learn how to survive when technology suddenly goes silent. Part 8. FIKA. When life is allowed to slow down. In the middle of a modern punctual society, Swedes still make room for a pause called FIKA. It's not simply about drinking coffee and eating a pastry. FIKA is when colleagues step away from their screens, friends sit down together, and conversations happen without needing a reason. Here rest isn't seen as laziness. People believe that working well doesn't mean working yourself to exhaustion. That same spirit lives in the concept of lagom. Not too much, not too little, just enough. A home that's warm enough. A job that's enough to live on. And a life that doesn't need to show off to prove it's happy. But behind those warm cups of coffee, Sweden still has to face something that money and welfare can't easily heal: long winter's darkness and the toll they take on people's mental health. Part 9. When winter brings more than just cold. In northern Sweden, winter brings days when the sun barely appears at all. The sky turns dark, early streets sink under snow, and the pace of life seems to slow down. That beauty feels almost cinematic. But living through months of darkness is a different story altogether. A lack of sunlight can leave people exhausted, unmotivated, and can take a toll on their mood. That's why Swedes make a point of getting outside, exercising, meeting friends, and making the most of every rare hour of daylight. Glowing windows, candles on the table, or a warm fika aren't just for decoration. Sometimes they're how people hold on to their spirit through the long, cold winter. Sweden may have built a safe, well-provided-for society, but no welfare system can fully erase the loneliness that can settle inside a person. And darkness isn't the only challenge. Behind the image of a peaceful nation, Sweden is also facing a reality that has made the whole world take a second look. Part 10. Cracks behind the peaceful picture. Sweden remains a place where most people live safely. But behind that image of order, gang violence has become a crack that's hard to hide. Shootings and bombings tied to score settling are concentrated mainly within criminal circles, especially in certain disadvantaged areas. More troubling, still, these networks are increasingly drawing in young people, even minors, to carry out violent acts in exchange for money and status. That's not the whole of Sweden, but it's no longer a problem that can be ignored either. The encouraging sign is that things are improving. In the first half of 2026, the number of shootings and bombings both dropped sharply compared to the same period the year before. Sweden is fighting to protect the peace that once defined its reputation. Because a civilized society isn't one without darkness. It's one that dares to look it in the eye. Part 11. Free to walk into nature. Even living amid modern cities, Swedes have never cut themselves off from nature. Thanks to the right of public access, allemansrätten, anyone can hike, camp for a short stay, pick wild berries, or explore forests and lakes even across much privately owned land, as long as they don't disturb or damage it. That freedom comes with one simple principle: leave no trace, no littering, no damaging trees or plants, no intruding on others' privacy. Nature welcomes you, but you're expected to leave as though you were never there. Perhaps that's why, for Swedes, the forest isn't just something to look at. It's a place they return to whenever the city grows too loud and life starts to feel too heavy. But this love of nature also feeds into something bigger, an ambition to build a modern country without sacrificing the future of generations to come. Part 12. The ambition to live without destroying the future. In Sweden, protecting the environment isn't just a slogan. It shows up in how people sort their waste return bottles for deposit, use public transportation, and choose products built to last. Many cities turn waste into heat and electricity. Renewable energy plays a major role, while electric vehicles show up more and more on the streets. But Sweden isn't perfect either. A wealthy society still consumes a great deal, and green technology can't erase every footprint people leave behind. What stands out is that they didn't wait for nature to cry out for help before taking action. Because for Swedes, progress isn't just about living well today. It's about leaving behind a country worth living in for those not yet born. And perhaps that spirit shows through most clearly in something quite special, the way they turn the coldest season of the year into its warmest one. Part 13. Light in the middle of winter. When winter plunges Sweden into darkness, people don't run from the cold. They light it up. In December, the feast of St. Lucia arrives with processions of people dressed in white candles in hand, singing in churches, schools, and out on the streets. Leading the way is usually a girl wearing a crown of candles on her head, a symbol of light and hope. Inside homes, windows glow, saffron buns come fresh out of the oven, and families gather close together. Outside, it may be bitterly cold, but it's precisely in the darkest days that human connection feels the warmest. Perhaps that's how Swedes live, not trying to erase winter, but learning to find light right in the middle of the darkness. And in the end, Sweden isn't a perfect paradise. It's a country of beauty paradox and quiet trade-offs, where every bit of peace comes with a price behind it. Sweden isn't paradise. It's a place where generous welfare comes with high taxes, where modern technology exists alongside a housing crisis, where freedom sometimes comes at the cost of distance, and where a full, comfortable life can still be shadowed by loneliness. But perhaps the most admirable thing about Sweden isn't its perfection. It's the way people here have learned to live with just enough to respect one another, to protect nature, and to kindle warmth even on the coldest days. Because happiness isn't a life without darkness. It's knowing where to find the light. So, would you be willing to trade high taxes, long winters, and absolute privacy for a life in Sweden? Leave your answer in the comments.